Welcome to a Fuller Life podcast where we discuss longevity strategies, disease prevention, and improving quality of life. We explore the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social aspects of having the life you want. This is Dr. Scott Fuller, and on this show we're going to be talking about brain health. This is my fourth show on Alzheimer's disease prevention and conservative treatment. But we're going to be talking about, in general, brain health in general. So how to keep a healthy brain, like avoiding age-related cognitive decline and so forth. Of course, we're making no promises here with these strategies that they're going to work, but the news is getting better and better. And the news about being able to prevent Alzheimer's, which is really scary for a lot of people, is getting better. That the information, the data, the research, the technology about prevention from a lifestyle standpoint, from a conservative standpoint, not from medications, is getting better. And that's what we're going to cover here. First is the disclaimer. This is not medical advice. Do not make any changes to your nutrition, your diet. Taking supplements, you shouldn't take any of those unless you're talking with your doctor, especially if you're taking any medications. And absolutely do not change any medications without talking to your doctor. If you're going to do any of the things that are suggested in here, I recommend that you talk to your doctor first before engaging in new exercise programs and so forth, okay? We're also not forming any doctor-patient relationship with this talk. All right. So on my programs in the past, I talked about brain health, and just as a general concept, we like talking about health span. So it's a bit different than lifespan. Lifespan is how long you're going to live. Health span is how long you're going to be healthy and functional to be able to do the things that you want to do in your life. And that's what I do in my office all day long. I talk about these things. I try to do them for me. I try to do them for my family, any of my patients, anyone else interested in health hacking, trying to make their life and their body and their brain last longer and better so you can have a longer health span. Again, different than lifespan. It just so happens that when you're doing healthy things for your brain and your body, you tend to live a little bit longer as well. I think it was Robert Lustig. He says, we have a longevity tax by living in the United States. When you compare people that live in the United States to people in Japan, it's like an 8-year longevity tax. We might live to 78 or 80 years old on average in the United States. It's 88 to 90 in Japan. So just living here is a longevity tax. Things to think about. Coming back to the brain, there are 8 topics that I mention when it comes to brain health. 8 buckets. And most of the things that you can do in your life are going to fall into these buckets. So let's go through them. Let's go through these buckets. And then you can start to see immediately areas in your life that you might need work, that you might need help, that things that you need to improve on. Totally cool. That's where you need to go. I have some weaknesses in here that need to be addressed, and I'm continuously looking at this list and going over it. So 8 brain topics, if you will. Number 1, of course, the king is exercise. If you want to have a body that works when you're getting older, when you want a brain that's going to function better, it is full stop. The number 1 thing you can do is physical exercise. Now, let's look at that. I'm going to break that down in a couple of minutes, what exercise you need to be doing. But exercise is number 1. And a close number 2 is like 1B, if you will, is nutrition. You can't out-exercise a bad diet, or you can't eat super clean but not get exercise and expect to get where you want to go. They're just in a partnership, right? Sleep is the 3rd one. Now, that's starting to really make its way up the list. Sleep. More and more doctors are now saying if you pepper people that are in the longevity world, in the quality of life world, in the health span world, you say, if there's one thing that people really need to focus on now, they're saying good quality sleep. So I just wanted to park on that and make that point for you. Next is stress. I think stress is the one that a lot of people are not addressing enough and understanding its root in some chronic diseases. Stress is root in in brain health and brain deterioration. Chronic stress, that is. Acute stress stuff, not a problem. Our bodies can adapt to that. Our physiology is okay with that. It's the chronic, slow drip of stress long-term that really breaks down our cells and our bodies and our neurons and our chemicals and our behavior and our psychology and so forth. So that's why I triple star that one as one thing that we need to really pay attention to. Next is supplements. We can get targeted supplements. After that is water. And then there's two more that, in my world, we talk a lot about this and the people that I hang out with and study with and so forth. So number 7 is spine and chiropractic. Taking care of your spine, your spinal alignment, flexibility, and so forth. If you picture a typical older person who's kind of not taking care of themselves, you can envision somebody that is kind of bent over, their posture's is deteriorating, but not only that, their spine is really stiff. They've lost a lot of range of motion, okay? Well, that can affect information into the nervous system and then the brain, and then the output from the brain and nervous system back to the body and so forth. So that's why I put that in there. And the last one is low-level laser. These are certain kinds of lasers, not the hot lasers, warm lasers, but low-level lasers, one that you can shine on the brain, that you can literally put on the skull, not the eyeballs now, not the eyeballs, but you can put on the skull. And I've had lasers in my practice for 18 years. So I put that in there, not because I have seen dementia cases get better that have been already diagnosed with laser, but because I've seen other brain issues improve with that. I bet there are practitioners out there that have seen some improvements with laser on a specific Alzheimer's. I haven't done that yet, but it's probably coming. Okay. So goals for today, if you think about what we're going to wrap our head around with, I want you to have a roadmap of things that you can do immediately to work on to try to make your life better, to try to make your brain better, okay? I'm going to give you some references so you can do a deeper dive if you want to go beyond what I'm going to be talking about here. Also, remember, it's never too early and it's never too late to start. So when you're on this train of trying to do things to make your life better, make your physical body better, make your brain better, it's never too early, never too late. Of course, the earlier you start, the better. It's like dental care, right? Taking care of your teeth. It's like physical exercise. The earlier you get started, the better it is, but it's never too late. I've got people in their 90s coming to my chiropractic office. They probably have never seen the inside of a gym. And I have them doing little exercises in the office, which then they go home and start doing just to start building up some postural muscles. Well, of course, that's doing things for their brain as well. So, that's good stuff. Also remember, above and beyond the podcast here, on my YouTube page, not only have I done Alzheimer's disease prevention parts 1, 2, and 3, but I also did a video, I think it's 12 years ago now, called the Alzheimer's Tsunami, and unfortunately some of the stuff in that video has been coming true, where I talk about that. Also on my YouTube page, just keep in mind I've got 300 plus videos on all kinds of health things, and we've done it on my cable television show and so forth. Okay. So, one podcaster, Gary Brecka, a human biologist, great stuff. I'm kind of new to Gary Brecka's stuff, and you're going to hear me talk about his situation and some other guests that he's had in a few minutes. But he had Dr. Gabrielle Lyon on his podcast in January of 2024, and she said the real key to longevity is self-discipline. And I agree with that. So self-discipline, when you go through that list of 8 things that I talked about, you realize, I have to have discipline to work out. I have to have discipline to eat things that don't taste good and stay away from things that taste good and eat more things that don't taste good. That takes discipline, right? So you're absolutely right. And she's right. I agree with her. So Gary Brecka's podcast is called The Ultimate Human Podcast. He had another guest on. I've mentioned this on the show before. He had Dana White on there in November of 2023. Dana White has such a good story because he changed his life around. He was feeling terrible. He had a lot of health issues. He had high blood pressure and high lipids in his blood and so forth. He was on various medications. And the doctors, this is from Dana now, He said, the doctor said, you're fine. Everything looks fine. Your blood work looks fine. And he said, well, why do I feel terrible? He did Gary Brecka's program, turned it all around, feels terrific. And his quote is, nothing tastes better, meaning food now, nothing tastes better than feeling amazing. And Gary Brecka also had Steve Harvey on in December of 2023, who also turned his life around doing his program. And Steve Harvey said, nothing tastes as good as I want to look. So, great stuff. Now, regarding specifically Alzheimer's, there are Alzheimer's care centers, nursing homes, and so forth that focus on this, right? And some of you might be thinking, wouldn't it be great to have facilities that employ this list of things that I'm talking right now to help people actually get better, as opposed to just watching them, managing the downslide, right? Well, there is. Thanks to Dr. Heather Sanderson, who's based in California, she opened a couple of centers. One is in California, one is now in Kansas. You can find them on maramaexperience.com. These are nursing care facilities, but are based on the Bredesen protocol of Alzheimer's treatment, which is all conservative care. It's nutrition and lifestyle and so forth. That's the focus of the entire 24-hour-a-day program at these facilities, and you bet they're turning them around. They are senior living facilities with a goal for residents to return to independent living. Did you get that? So they're trying to have them go back home, depending on the severity of the case and so forth, but that's what they're trying to do. And for anybody, specifically if you're a clinician, if you want to do a deeper dive on some of the things that we're talking about, if you go to a website called drtalks.com, they have a variety of programs on there. Even if you're lay public, you can go on there and sign up for these summits and just listen. Many of them are for free, at least during the live airing of it. And they have a reverse Alzheimer's summit coming up in 2024, just so you know that. So for some of you, if you have a family member or a friend that has an Alzheimer's diagnosis, but let's say they're not ready to be institutionalized, or it's just something that's out of your budget, and you're like, well, I'd love to go to one of these facilities in California or Kansas, but I'm not going to afford that, there is an at-home option. So what you can do is Dr. Sanderson has an online method of learning the tools and techniques if you are so inclined and you have maybe some support systems and other people that are involved, so you can employ all of these tactics at home. Go to this website, maramaathome.com, and it's like $500 for a pretty lengthy program on learning the tactics and techniques of the Bredesen protocol. So there are ways to do it, and as opposed to just a facility, in other words. I just finished another online series with a variety of clinicians. You can find this on thebetterbrainblueprint.com in 2024. Some of the practitioners included David Perlmutter, Mark Hyman, Dale Bredesen that I had mentioned, Jeffrey Bland, Sarah Gottfried, Heather Sanderson, Jim Quick, Deanna Minich, and many others. And this is where some of the data and information that I'm telling you came from. So Dr. Bredesen has a couple of published studies now on improving the symptoms of Alzheimer's dementia and having measurable improvements with lifestyle intervention only and not medication, lifestyle intervention. Dr. Heather Sanderson just completed a research project, I think coming out of one of her Marama centers. Anyway, same thing, doing the Bredesen protocol, a lifestyle management protocol, and actually having measurable improvements in the MoCA score. That's one way of determining where somebody is regarding their brain health and function. And so she was able to demonstrate that. So, and these are published articles in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. One is in 2018, one is in 2022. So there is literally now research saying, yes, the lifestyle protocol works. As I've told you on my show before, I have mentioned the Bredesen protocol to many, many dozens of families and people and so forth. Only one has taken it on, and out of that case study of one, this couple, the woman has had a diagnosis. She had measurable improvements in her cognition that the husband, the caretaker, could notice and see. So I have one case study, which with a good improvement. And the beauty of all of this, as we're talking about it, there's no downside that I can see of improving your lifestyle, right? Okay. So diving a little bit more on that list of 8, let's go to exercise. I've said that exercise is not optional. Exercise is mandatory. Now remember, sure. There are some people where they need one-on-one consultation because it's unsafe for them for falling purposes or osteoporosis or joint issues or whatever. They need talented therapists, physicians, clinicians, and so forth to work with them. Totally get that. Just remember the 2 men I'm thinking of in their 90s that come into my office that walk in with walkers. I have them sitting on a table or a chair doing some band-related exercises so you can find a way if you're committed to it. Exercise is king, nutrition is queen. Put them together and you've got a kingdom, says Jack LaLanne. We agree. By the way, some of you know who that is when I say Jack LaLanne. So Jack LaLanne passed away in 2011. He was 96. And by the way, his wife, Elaine LaLanne, is still alive. She's still kicking, and she's doing great. And she's 97 as far as I know, the recording right here in 2024. And both of their websites are still up, jacklalaine.com, elainelalaine.com. Peter Attia, medical physician, peterattia.com. He has a new book out called Outlive. Great book. He's got a section on Alzheimer's dementia and prevention. And one thing he wanted to tell everybody is when you look at strength, how much power, strength you have in your muscles, if you test a bunch of people and you have them do grip strength is a measure of your overall body strength. Now, this doesn't mean go run around and just squeeze something to improve your grip strength. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about general strength fitness, okay? But one way to measure that across the board is called grip strength. Got it? If you compare the lowest 25% of people with grip strength, so the weakest in the bunch, those people have a 72% higher incidence of dementia compared to the top quarter of grip strength. So that is a huge number from the weakest on the testing to the strongest on the testing. Keep that in mind. You've got to keep your body strong. Page 201 of his book, Outlive, he says, exercise is the best tool we have to keep the brain strong and prevent Alzheimer's. But you got to do the other things too. Remember I talked about Gabrielle Lyon on Gary Brecker's podcast in January 2024? She said 50% of Americans don't exercise at all. That's bad. Only 24% of Americans meet the basic cardiovascular and strength training workout recommendations. And she says exercise is non-negotiable, and we, of course, agree with that. Rhonda Patrick is another great resource. I recommend you dig up her stuff, please. Found My Fitness is her website, and she's got a podcast. And all of these people on the podcast that I'm mentioning in this show, they basically have been on each other's shows and so forth. So it's a great network of information and people that you can draw on. She talked about in her podcast in December of 2023, titled Longevity and Brain Benefits of Vigorous Exercise. Yeah, I get it. If you haven't exercised your entire life, you got to check with your doctor. If you're on medications, you got to check with your doctor. If you haven't exercised in your entire life and you're just going to get started again, you can't start with vigorous exercise. Just keep that in mind. But here we go. Well, I don't have an hour to go to the gym. Fine. She talks about exercise snacks, ways of integrating brief exercise periods during the day to squeeze it in. You can do 3 to 9 minutes 3 times a day, and that makes measurable improvements in cognitive function and mood and decrease in cardiovascular disease and so forth. So there's a variety of ways of integrating these small, and lots of other people do, small exercise breaks during the day that most people can get in there. Dr. Andrew Huberman, hubermanlab.com, great information, great videos, great podcast. He recommends the amount of exercise now, load-bearing exercises 3 to 4 times a week. And then for people that can do this and have the physical body to do this, 150 to 180 minutes, so about 2.5, 3 hours a week of zone 2 cardio. So most people here are recommending strength training and cardio, and I agree. But don't forget the strength training at the top. Dale Bredesen, spoke about him before. He's been everywhere on podcasts. Great program. His book is Reversing Alzheimer's. In there, he talks about aerobic and strength training, 30 to 60 minutes, 5 to 6 days a week. I have said, when people ask me, what is the ideal frequency of exercise? And I'll tell them, you do not need to exercise every day. Just exercise on the days that you eat. That's the frequency. Number 2 on our list, nutrition. I think everybody knows we've got to pay attention to this. So Robert Lustig, he has a couple of books that I've mentioned in the past. He has a book called Fat Chance, great book, good read. He has the book, The Hacking of the American Mind, great book, really, really great. I am knee-deep in his newer book called Metabolical. Great book. And you need to dive in there. And he breaks it down to this. He basically says this. He now has 6 words that he uses as a criteria of should I eat this or should I not eat that. He says, protect your liver and feed your gut. Okay? Well, what does protect your liver mean? Kind of like blood sugar, kind of like blood glucose and triglycerides and insulin, right? Protect your liver. Because if you're eating too much garbage, too many things that taste good, too much added sugar, you're overwhelming your liver. And your liver is your centers of protein metabolism, your center of carbohydrate metabolism, your centers of fat metabolism. It's basically ruling that entire deal and also being the number 1 detoxification organ in your body. So that's why you're going to protect your liver, right? And then feed your gut. What does he mean by that? Feed your microbiome. Feed all of the wonderful, happy, healthy, neutral bacteria in your gut. And you do that with soluble and insoluble fiber. And if you're eating more processed foods, it's devoid of that fiber. You need to eat more vegetables especially, and fruits and other whole starches and so forth, right? Makes sense. So Michael Pollan has said, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And that's a great summary. Remember that Blue Zones. Now, I read the book Blue Zones before I think it's a Netflix series or something like that, whatever it is. Now, lots of people ask me about it because it made it onto television and movies and whatever, so now people saw it instead of reading the book. Anyway, so people ask me about Blue Zones all the time. I said, yeah, I read the book a long time ago. Blue Zones, by the way, is 90 to 100% plant-based. I'm not saying that because you need to be a vegetarian. I'm not saying that at all. You're going to see it's actually different than that as we push forward. But that's what the Blue Zone people are eating real food, right? So here's what Dale Bredesen with the Bredesen Protocol and Heather Sanderson say. Their dietary recommendation is called a KetoFlex 12-3. KetoFlex is a mildly ketosis diet. So it's leaning a little bit more on paleo. It's heavy vegetable. It's mostly plant-based. But what's the 12-3? 12 is you want 12 hours of no food, okay? So simply put, if the last mouthful of food you have is at 6 p.m., the next one is 6 a.m. Well, if you think about it, it's not really that big of a deal, right? You just make sure you finish dinner at 6, so then your next meal is at 6 a.m., okay? Well, we don't finish eating until 7. Fine. Then you make it 7 a.m. But the 3 is really important, the 3 part of this. No food 3 hours before you go to bed. So you got to back it down. You go to bed at 10, the last thing you eat is at 7. That is a big factor. That one I want to park on for a second, and people need to wrap their head around that. So the key portion is not eating a big meal and going to bed. And that's what a lot of us do. I'm raising my hand. I used to do that in the past, so I'm guilty too. But the longer the span between the last meal you have and the time you go to bed, the better your liver's going to be, your blood glucose regulation is going to be, the fat in your body, the chemistry of your brain, the better quality sleep, and so on and so on and so on. The longer that period of time is, the better you're going to do. So there are alleles that you can test with that some of you have heard about, these alpha lipoproteins And if you have 2 copies of the ApoE4 allele, you're at a higher risk of having Alzheimer's dementia down the road. Now, it's not a guarantee, not a guarantee, not a guarantee. Kind of like all my grandparents had heart disease and my parents had heart disease, I'm going to have heart disease. Nope. We know that that's now not the case. If you take care of yourself, of course. So with people that have the 2 copies of the ApoE4 allele, apolipoprotein E4, you have to work just a little bit harder, right? So if you have a tendency toward heart disease, because that's in your family, you just have to work a little bit harder. That's the key. So it might be a little bit different with somebody like that. And there's information out there on what to do. Back to Dr. Peter Attia. He recommends a Mediterranean-style diet. Lots of people do. Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Bredesen, Dr. Heather Sanderson. So most people can wrap their head around a Mediterranean diet. It's based on real food, and it's high in plants. Plant intake makes sense. Andrew Huberman talks about the Mediterranean diet. Jeffrey Moss, Heather Sanderson, I do, Dr. Dan Murphy, Dr. Andrew Weil, Dr. Mark Hyman, all of these people saying that's a good way to go. Mediterranean diet is a good way to go. It's one of the best nutritional programs to follow on the planet. That's where some of the blue zones are as well, right? Kind of makes sense. A couple of other basic things that I can have people work on. 10% more vegetables overall. What can I do right now, Dr. Fuller? What can I do right now? How about 10% vegetables across the board, which includes breakfast, and 10% smaller dinner. 10% smaller dinner. Again, it's better to front load the day, more at breakfast, more at lunch, less at dinner is a better way to go. It's not the way that we're set up in America, pretty much. But that is a better way to go. Much less added sugar. And here's another key, this could be just a game changer for a lot of you, is don't drink any calories. Don't drink any calories. No soda, which includes no diet soda. Oh, there's no calories in diet soda. Yeah, just look at the ingredients and do your research. You'd be like, oh my goodness, for my brain, I need to stop diet soda and diet drinks and diet teas and whatever else. So no drinking of any calories. That includes sport drinks unless you're some sort of an athlete, endurance athlete, where you need to have things like that. The rest of us do not. Okay, number 3, sleep. Good quality sleep. This is something that a lot of us need to work on. I've mentioned this on this program several times before. Matthew Walker has a great book, Why We Sleep. Great book. I've talked about it. I'll give you some hints in there. Dr. Peter Attia talks about it in his book. On the Diary of CEO podcast, and you can dig up that podcast. That's easy to find. Kristen Holmes was on there. She did a great job. Andrew Huberman talks a lot about sleep in his podcast. Rich Roll has talked about it. So there's a lot of people out there talking about the good quality sleep and the recommendations of getting there. Dr. Matthew Walker's work, you can go to Sleep Diplomat, sleepdiplomat.com. That's his website for hints and more. Andrew Huberman did a podcast called The Sleep Toolkit. He had Dr. Matthew Walker on. Dale Bredesen in his Reversing Alzheimer's program says 7 to 8 hours per night. I agree. I need 8, so I'm with you. I need 8. I shoot and aim and go for 8 every night, because if I get good solid 8, I'm good. I'm full on. I'm game on when I get good quality sleep, like a lot of you are. Here's just a couple of things on sleep. Try to go to bed around the same time every night, including weekends. Try to wake up around the same time as best you can. Completely dark bedroom. Get the electronics out of the bedroom. Make sure there's no blinking lights and powered lights and phones and computers and stuff like that as best you can. I recommend TV out of there and so forth. And one basic helpful hint for a lot of people is no caffeine after breakfast. No caffeine after breakfast. That is a game changer for a lot of people. You can have 1 or 2 cups. I recommend 1. You can have 1 or 2 cups. So just make sure it's at breakfast and shut it down for the rest of the day. Another reason not to drink soda, diet soda, a lot of them have caffeine, right? Number 4, stress. Now, when I say stress, this is important. I'm talking about your mental and emotional and spiritual health, not just stress reduction. I just say stress to make it quick. But you can work on your stress with working on your mental physiology. You can work on stress by working on your emotional health. You can work on it by enhancing your spirituality, whatever that looks like for you. So working on this is a good way to improve brain chemistry, improve your health span, reductions in chronic disease problems, including Alzheimer's. And it's a thing that's really not talked about. And for the most part, there's no pill out there either. We got to do the work. And I'm raising my hand. I've done a lot of work there myself. One softener that a lot of my patients I've loved when we talked about stress is calling it, I say this, when pressures and challenges come your way. Pressures and challenges. Kind of a different way, because when you hear the word stress, just the word stress sounds stressful, doesn't it? Because it's just so ubiquitous. It's everywhere, right? If you just reframe that to pressure and challenge, and you know all of us are going to have pressure and challenge in our lives all the time, forever. But it's how we handle and deal and show up and react to pressures and challenges. That is a very simplistic and easy overview of what it is all about, but I think that that's a way to kind of grasp on what we're talking about here is thinking of it as pressures and challenges making you rise to the occasion, whatever it is. And there are terrible, horrendous, awful things happening on the planet and to people and individuals and totally, and I got that. And people come from circumstances way worse than mine. I had my own challenges, but way worse than mine. But people do find ways to handle pressures and challenges in better ways, gifted ways, working at it ways. And even if you had a wonderful upbringing and your life is really good right now, as Tony Robbins likes to say, it's emotional fitness. You want to be working on that your entire life. So when the pressures and challenges do arrive, you're already fit. You're already emotionally fit so you can handle these things. And by the way, he's a great resource, is working with looking at Tony Robbins' stuff, which is really solid in my opinion. He has great strategies and techniques and tactics. Look at any of his programs, videos and audios and books and classes and whatever else. By the way, great as a side note here, dealing with stress. Here's a book that I just finished. It was given to me by a massage therapist that I know, and she said, "You've got to read this book. This is really good." Like she said it with intensity. She brought me a copy. She brought it to me. You got to read this book. It's called The Rocking Chair Prophet. The Rocking Chair Prophet. And Matthew Kelly, right, is the author? I mean, read the book. Just go get the book. It's a thought-provoking book. I thought it was astronomically wonderful. Please go get that book. Okay. Very quickly, going through some stress busting tactics. That's what I call them. Stress busting tactics. Here's a list. Impeccable self-talk. A lot of us talk ourselves down. Look at your thoughts. When you find yourself talking to yourself, I can't do that. That's not for me. I'm not good enough. Didn't have the skill. Nope, can't do it. You're not this, you're not that, and whatever, right? Start changing that. Well, wait a minute. Ask yourself the question, wait a minute, is that true? And that was just a pattern. I just gave that a pattern interrupt, right? This is Tony Robbins and other people use this as well. That's a pattern interrupt, right? You say, I'm not good enough, I'm not skilled enough, I'm not worthy enough, right? Wait a minute, is that true? And then if you say it's not true, you're putting the brakes on the brain of running that old pattern, that old cycle, there it is again, this winding wheel of doom, right? And you break that by saying, is that true? And then you can sit back with that and you can think about it, you can meditate on it, you can talk about it if that's appropriate with somebody, or talk it out loud like I am right now to the microphone, or you can journal about it, whatever it is. You can talk to a therapist if you have a therapist or counselor that you work with and say, wait, is that true? Maybe you come up with a different answer. Second, better questions. Well, I just gave you an example of that. Can we ask better questions? Tony Robbins had a great one. I always love this one. Someday we'll laugh about this. And he would say, why wait? Right? When some silly stressor or a story or something, you made a funny, bad decision or whatever, laugh it off. Why wait? Number 3, daily brain food. Start putting in some stuff. Everybody talks about shut off the news, get more brain food in, right? Thought-provoking stuff. I just gave you an example of a book, right? How about 2 pages a night? Listening to 5 minutes or 10 minutes of a great audiobook. How about throwing on some meditation music and closing your eyes for 3 minutes? I mean, any of that can work. Go to a yoga class, whatever it is, right? Number 4, turn off the poison being media, media, media. Number 5, forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that crushed it. Number 6 is gratitude. Working on gratitude, I do a gratitude list every day in my thoughts and verbally. Oftentimes write it down. A lot of people like Oprah Winfrey talk about writing down a gratitude journal, whatever it is. It can be little things. Tony Robbins talks about this. It can be little things, big things, whatever. Diane Cirencioni said, be grateful for life's be grateful for life's tough teachers. Life's tough teachers. Number 7, perspective helps me when I think I'm going to have a bad day or a bad moment or a bad reaction. I use perspective. What kind of perspective? How about Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl? I think about somebody who had to go through the Holocaust. He lived, and then he became a great man for the rest of his life. He could have chosen to be anxious, depressed, angry, whatever, but he chose another path. The book and then movie Unbroken about Louis Zamperini, who was shot down over the Pacific and caught by the Japanese and then in a prisoner of war camp for a couple of years, right? Then led a beautiful life after that and have full forgiveness for his captors. Nelson Mandela, Captain Gerald Coffey, who was shot down in Vietnam and in the Hanoi Hilton for 6 or 7 years, and he became a great man after that. So there are ways. Search for mentors in your life. That's number 8. Mentors in your life that can be guides for you in changing your mindset about your past and in your relationship to what happens in your life and what has happened in your life. One video that I really like, I've just got to say this again to you. Go to YouTube, put this in. The Strangest Secret, Earl Nightingale, 1950, original, full. The Strangest Secret, Earl Nightingale, 1950, original, full. If you get the 40-minute and 25-second video, it's introduced by his wife. You will be very happy you sought that out. You sought that out. Okay. So I've done several videos, and actually, I'm going to mention this one because I think another person, Simon Sinek, he has a lot of great information and videos about changing that mindset and having thinking skills. Les Brown is another one. Lissa Rankin, Kim Duramo, Brene Brown. I just have just references like crazy. TrishWynot.com. Trish Wynot. Seek out her stuff. Stephen Covey, Zig Ziglar. There's a lot of resources there for you. Okay, number 5, supplements. This is pretty straightforward. Robert Lustig, I just heard him recently on a video. I think it was on Andrew Huberman's video. He says, hey, I take 1 gram of fish oil per day. Robert Lustig. He really is mostly, he says, supplements should only be for deficiencies, but here's what I take. He takes 1 gram of fish oil, 1 gram of vitamin C, and he takes 5,000 IUs of vitamin D per day, Robert Lustig. Peter Attia takes supplements including omega-3 fish oil. My mentor, Dr. Dan Murphy, has had specific supplementation protocols that I have followed for 25 years, and I lead my patients along that route. Remember to check with your doctor if you're taking medications. Dr. Rhonda Patrick, that I've mentioned in the past, she has said, quote, omega-3s are the low-hanging fruit for your brain. Take them. Dr. Dale Bredesen in his protocols includes, for supplements, B, C, D, E, K, and zinc, including 2+ grams of fish oil per day. Number 6, water. Most people are dehydrated. Don't increase your water a lot if you're taking medications until you talk with your doctor. Dr. Dan Murphy, my mentor, has a great story that he talks about a lot, where he had a patient drinking, a 30-year-old woman drinking six cans of diet soda per day. She had chronic pain. No doctors could figure it out. Ended up in his office. She took the history form, wrote that down. He said, get off the soda. Let's see what it does for you. A month later, pain gone. I just had a patient come into me in 2024, 8 cans of diet soda per day. I said, get off it. He said, okay. And he did it. He's off his soda. And it's been at least a month. I'm proud of him. We'll see what happens. On my YouTube page, I did a great video called Water Rules. Water Rules. You can go look that up. The rough gauge is half your body weight in ounces. If you're 150 pounds, that's 75 ounces. 200 pounds, that's 100 ounces. Here's the issue. I got it. I get it. Here's the issue. I'm older. I got to pee a lot. My body doesn't work well. I don't want to get out of bed a lot. I don't want to drink water because then I have to get up more and it's really a struggle and it interrupts my sleep and I don't want to. So a lot of older people stay away from drinking enough water throughout their day because they're afraid of getting up at night to pee. Got that? Right? I got it. So I've worked with this a lot. That's why on my water rules video, I say you've got to front load the day. You start the day immediately with water first thing in the morning, even though you don't want to. And so for older people that have to pee a lot and so forth, and they don't want to get up, they have to front load their day and then shut it down. So if they stop drinking water 3 hours before bedtime, most people are going to do okay. They won't awake anymore. And by the way, I have a table in my office for urinary and pelvic floor issues that can rehabilitate some people. And they're scattered across the country. So go look this up. Look this up now. pelvicwave.com. pelvicwave.com is the chair version. I have the table version, same technology. I have the table version, reactinnovations.com. It is a bioelectric magnet, no contact pads. You do it fully clothed. You just sit on the chair, sit on the table. And by a magnetic field, it will stimulate muscles and depolarize nerves and rehabilitate the muscles of the pelvic floor. And for a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people, this helps them decrease the urinary frequency and it can help with incontinence and so forth and other pelvic floor issues. Look into it. That's a serious issue, but that has helped some of my patients and other patients that have done that, the chair and the table around the country. By the way, those websites have search engines where you can find practitioners that have that technology. Number 7, spine and chiropractic. I touched on that. So, Dr. Fuller, is there any research on Alzheimer's, dementia, and chiropractic? As far as I know, no. But what I can tell you is there is research that shows that chiropractic treatments improve blood flow to the brain. They can see this on functional MRI. There are a few good research articles on chiropractic care, even one visit, reducing blood pressure significantly. Okay? So if you're improving blood flow to the brain, that's affecting your sympathetic, parasympathetic, autonomic nervous system. Blood flow to the brain sounds pretty important, doesn't it? It's decreasing blood pressure. And so we know these things. And if we're improving posture and alignment and flexibility, you're going to improve those special nerve endings in and around the tissues of your spine, which will continue to improve the barrage of nerve ending and nerve traffic into your brain on an ongoing basis, not just the day that you're at the office, but on an ongoing basis, because you're going to work on alignment, posture, flexibility, mobility of the spine. That makes sense to me. So that could be a consideration for you. Lastly is low-level laser. Certain lasers you can use on the brain, not on the eye, can use in the brain because they don't generate any heat. They're low level. We're talking 5 milliwatts, 7.5 milliwatts, 22 milliwatts. Really, really, really low power, but they've really done great things. I talk about this on my videos. It's also, I've seen great improvements with concussion that were not coming around, and then we start doing laser on them. So because of those results that I've seen, I put that in my protocols of things that people could consider when they're trying to do everything for their brain health, prevention of problems down the road with making no promises, but having a protocol of improving the systems in your brain, the tactics and techniques that you use day to day as a strategy to improve your health span, improve the function of your brain, decrease the chances of all sorts of chronic diseases, and live a better life. I'm Dr. Scott Fuller. Thank you. Thank you for listening to A Fuller Life podcast. For a video of this podcast, go to my YouTube channel, Dr. Scott Fuller, which has a lot of additional content.